21 Open Championships, 1894 through 1914. Three guys won 16 of them. Three working class kids, all born within 12 months of each other, all from three different corners of the British Isles. One from a windswept island in the English Channel, one from a fishing village in Scotland, one from a stretch of seaside links in Devon. For 20 years, pro golf was basically their personal tour. They played each other, they traveled together, and they got photographed together so often that the three faces became, for an entire generation, what golf looked like. Harry Vardon, James Braid, J. H. Taylor. The Great Triumvirate. The name belongs to Bernard Darwin, who you might already know as one of the great golf writers of all time, and who, yes, he was Charles Darwin's grandson. Darwin watched all three of them in their prime. He said you couldn't separate them. You could argue about which one had the better year, but the argument ended at the edge of the triumvirate. Everyone else was playing a tier below. In the era they owned, golf itself was being invented. Not the rules existed, but I mean the whole business of it, the pro sport, the traveling show, equipment deals, the idea that a regular person could make a little living swinging a stick at a little ball. The entire world was getting built from scratch, and these three were building most of it. So today we're taking it back to the turn of the 20th century, the last years of the Victorian era. Three kids who should have been a gardener, a joiner, and a laborer, who ended up being the three best players on the planet instead. Let's roll it back. Picture golf in 1890. The Open's been running for 30 years. The two biggest names in the sport are Old Tom Morris and his son Young Tom. Old Tom's got 4 Opens. Young Tom won 4 in a row before dying at 24 of a broken heart after his wife and baby didn't survive childbirth. It's covered in a separate episode. Go check it out. The point is, golf in 1890 is a Scottish game, played mostly in Scotland, with a handful of outposts in England. There may be a few hundred pros on the entire planet, and being a professional is not something you would brag about to your mother. A pro at this point is a craftsman and a laborer. They make clubs, they repair gutta percha balls, they tend the greens, they caddy for their members. They give lessons for a few shillings, and at most clubs, the pro can't set foot in the clubhouse. They go in the back door with the groundskeepers. Instead, the amateurs are the stars, the gentlemen, guys with money and land and leisure time. They win the tournaments the newspapers cover. They wear ties. They're lords and viscounts and Scottish aristocrats. A pro who beats one of them is a curiosity, a novelty, like the help showing up the master at the master's own game. The ball is gutta percha, solid rubber gum, covered in a previous episode. It cracks and deforms on you. Clubs are hickory shafted, greens are rough, bunkers are wherever the sheep dug. Playing conditions change week to week, course to course, hole to hole. And the swings are these long, loose, theatrical things. St. Andrew's swings, wide arcs, big finishes. Old Tom and Willie Park Sr. swung like they were mowing hay. This is the game that Harry Vardon picks up a club in, and Harry Vardon is about to change it. Let's meet the Jersey boys again, covered in our previous episode. Harry Vardon is born on May 9th, 1870, on the island of Jersey. It's a tiny British isle in the English Channel, closer to France than to England. The Vardon family lives in a village called Growville. Harry's dad is a gardener. The family is poor in the way rural British families were poor at the end of the 19th century. There's food on the table, and that's about it. When Harry is 7, a thing happens that changes his life, which nobody clocks out at the time. A group of Scottish golfers show up in Jersey and lay out a golf course, right on top of the common land where Harry and his brothers already play. The club is called Royal Jersey. The Vardon boys suddenly have this random playground that happens to be by pure accident where the men of Jersey learned to play golf. Harry starts as a caddy. He watches. He carves clubs out of tree branches with a hunk of wood for a head. He drives stones around the common with these homemade contraptions. Age 12, he leaves school and goes to work. At first, a page boy, then a gardener like his dad. Various jobs around Jersey for the next 10 years. Golf is just a weekend thing, an after work thing. Something he does when there's light and there's no work left. He doesn't actually play serious until he's about 20. His older brother Tom, who has already turned pro, has to nudge him into competing. Harry's a late bloomer, shy, quiet, careful. He looks like a guy destined to finish second best in his own family. James Braid is born February 6, 1870, in Earlsferry, Scotland. It's a fishing village on the Firth of Forth, roughly 8 miles south of St. Andrews. Yes, Braid goes a walking distance from the most famous golf course on the planet. His family wants him to be a carpenter, so Braid dutifully goes off and does his apprenticeship. 4 years, then Edinburgh, then London. His day job through most of his 20s is making golf clubs at the Army and Navy stores in London. He's a full-on tradesman, a guy who also happens to play. Braid is tall, gangly, over 6 feet, quiet to the point of silent. One golf writer claimed that if you played around with James Braid, he might say 3 sentences the whole way around, and 2 of them would be about the weather. But when the man swung a golf club, writers describe the sound as a whip cracking across a field. Braid doesn't turn pro until 1896. He's 26 at this point, late even by the standards of this era. He does it for the most boring reason imaginable. A guy tells him he can make more money selling clubs at a golf club rather than an Army and Navy store. So he takes the job. The job's at a place called Romford, just outside London. And that job is going to change his life. John Henry Taylor, forever known as J.H. Taylor, is born March 19, 1871, in northern Devon. Devon is the southwest of England. Northern is a little village perched above a stretch line of coast called Westward Ho. Westward Ho is the town. It's also the golf course, Royal North Devon, founded in 1864, the oldest seaside links in England. Westward Ho is the town where J.H. Taylor grows up. Taylor's father is a laborer, but he dies when J.H. is small. His family is very poor. J.H. leaves school at 11 and goes to work. He's a gardener's boy, a mason's laborer, a house servant. But mostly he works on the golf course. He caddies, he rolls the greens, he pulls stones out of the rough, whatever the club needs him to do. One thing goes his way, and it turns out to matter a lot. The member he caddies most for is Horace Hutchinson. If that name rings a bell, it should. Hutchinson's a 2-time British Am champion, one of the greatest English amateurs of the era. He takes an interest in young J.H. He lets him play, encourages him. He gives him his old clubs. Taylor is short and solid. He's built like a bit pony. His stance is so wide and low, people say he looks like he's bracing for a hurricane. His personality matches the stance. He's opinionated. He's direct. He says exactly what he thinks. He's a union guy before golf has unions. And he's, by basically every account of the era, the greatest natural iron player the sport has ever seen. So there you go. Vardon on Jersey, Braid in Fife, Taylor in Devon. 3 working class kids. 3 absent or dead fathers one way or another. 3 boys who stumble into golf because golf happens to be played near their house. And these kids, they're about to flip the game on its head. J.H. Taylor gets there first, which matters because for a minute in the 1890s, it looks like J.H. Taylor is just going to be the guy. Not one of 3, but just the guy. Taylor wins the Open in 1894 at Royal St. George's in Sandwich. He's 23. He's the first Englishman ever to win the thing. every Open champion before him has been Scottish. It's an earthquake. In next year, 1895, he wins it again at St. Andrews, the home of golf itself, by 4 shots. 2 Opens back to back, 24 years old. Taylor looks untouchable. But then comes 1896. In 1896, the Open's at Murfield. The quiet young Jersey man named Harry Vardon, who just moved to England to take a pro job at a small Yorkshire club called Ganton, shows up with a game nobody's ever seen before. Most top players of this era have these long, loose St. Andrews swings. Big backswing, wild finish, lots of body. Vardon swings differently. He's upright, he's compact. It almost looks like a pendulum-like. He hits it high, he hits it long, and above all else, he hits it quite straight. He also does something with his hands nobody else is doing. At least not like this. He overlaps the pinky of his right hand on top of the index finger of his left hand. Everybody else in 1896 uses what we now call the baseball grip, 10 fingers on the club. Vardon's overlap locks his hands together. It makes him more consistent, more repeatable, takes the wrist flip right out of the swing. The grip is probably the grip you're using right now, or the one your teacher's been trying to get you to use, and it's called the Vardon grip. Technically, he didn't invent it. A Scottish amateur named Johnny Laidley has been using it since the mid-1880s. Laidley won 2 British amateurs with it in 1889 and 1891. So the overlap was already floating around in the Scottish game, but Vardon took the idea and proved it worked at the very highest level. Vardon wrote down his own explanation years later in his 1905 book, The Complete Golfer. The idea is simple, he said. The 10-finger grip lets your 2 hands work against each other. Overlap the pinky of your right hand on top of the index finger of your left, and your 2 hands are forced to work together as one unit. Less wrist flip, less twist through impact, more repeatability. Every teacher on YouTube is saying some version of the same sentence today. It also suited Vardon personally. Big hands, thin hickory shafts, strong waist from a decade of manual labor. The overlap let him keep his hands quiet on the club and still move it at the speed he needed to be successful. A fun piece of the story? J.H. Taylor also used a version of the overlap, though slightly different from Vardon's. James Braid, he played the baseball grip his entire career. So of the 3 members of the Triumvirate, only 2 of them used the grip that now bears Vardon's name. One of the most famous grips in the history of golf was not even universal among its inventor's closest friends. Vardon's grip would work at Murfield at the Open in 1896, but barely. He ties Taylor after 4 rounds. They come back the next day for a 36-hole playoff. Vardon beats Taylor by 4. That playoff is the moment. That's where this era starts. A 26-year-old Jersey man beats the 2-time defending Open champ head-to-head, and the sport tilts on its axis. Vardon would win the Open again in 1898 at Prestwick and again in 1899 at Sandwich. 3 Opens in 4 years. By the end of the century, Harry Vardon is the most famous golfer on planet Earth. And he's about to get even more famous because he's about to hop on a boat and sail to America. But before we get to that, we have to talk about James Braid, because the 3rd leg of the Triumvirate is finally about to show up. Braid's first real crack at the Open is 1897. He finishes 2nd. Second attempt in 1898, though, he finishes 11th. His 3rd attempt, 1899, he finishes 5th. He's close, he's right there, but something's off, and that something is his putter. The swing is already a champion's swing. Consensus is he is the longest hitter on tour. When he catches one, the ball lands in places other players simply can't reach. But once he gets to the green, that's where everything falls apart. His putting, by his own admission, is terrible. 3 putts, lip outs, left short. But then, in 1900, he does a thing that sounds simple, but took humility to actually pull off. He switches putters. He had been playing a wooden putter, which was standard at the time, but he's about to switch to a newer metal one, aluminum headed. It works. His putting gets better almost overnight. And in 1901, back at Murfield for the Open, James Braid will win his first. He's 31 years old. And now the triumvirate is complete. From 1901 on, the Open is basically a three-man tournament. One of them wins it almost every year for the next 13 years. Braid in 1901, Vardon in 1903, Braid in 1905, 06, 08, and 1910, Taylor in 1900, 1909, and 1913, Vardon again in 1911 and 1914. To clarify, between 1894 and 1914, the three of them go 16 for 21. Everyone else on Earth combined wins 5. And of those 5, none are blowouts. Most get missed by a shot or two or lost in a playoff. The three of them are the tournament. Everyone else is just filling out the field. James Braid, the quiet one, wins 5 Opens in 9 years. He's the first player in history to do it. Vardon had to wait until 1911 to match him, but then passes him with 6 in 1914. Braid would never win a U.S. Open because he never goes to America. He won't cross the Atlantic. Some say he's seasick, some say he's afraid of water. He never gives a straight answer. He just straight up refuses. So the whole James Braid legend gets built on British soil. 5 Opens, 4 British match play titles, which was essentially the British PGA Championship of the era. Thousands of rounds. When the triumvirate story gets told in America, Braid is usually the one nobody knows much about, just because he never came over. That's our loss, because hole for hole, James Braid was as good as any golfer who's ever lived. It's time for the obvious plot twist, but it's never going to come. You would expect these guys to hate each other. Brutal rivals, born within a year of each other, carving up every championship for 2 decades. You would expect a Bird Magic, Michael Jordan energy. Public shade, refusing to share exhibitions, something. Nope. Vardon, Braid, and Taylor are close friends for most of their lives. They play hundreds of exhibitions together. They travel together. They sit on the PGA Council together. They show up in newspaper photos together so often, the Triumvirate has become its own brand. You could buy postcards of them. You could buy cigarette cards. You could, if you were that kind of collector, buy cufflinks with all 3 of their faces stamped in the metal. The reason for this is part era, part personality. Exhibition matches are where pros actually made their money in this era. An open win would only pay about £50. A weekend of exhibitions pays 2 or 3 times that. So the 3 of them figure it out collectively that if they travel together, they can pack any course in Britain any day of the week. They're a traveling roadshow. Barnum and Bailey of pro golf. Taylor actually wrote about it. They agreed early on that whatever happened on the golf course stayed there. They played to win brutally. They holed every putt. They conceded nothing. But once the round was over, they were friends. Dinner, whiskey, next train to the next town. One of these exhibitions gets quoted more than the rest. It's 1905. Braid and a player named Sandy Hurd are against Vardon and Taylor. 72 holes of foursomes over 4 different courses. St. Andrews, Troon, St. Anne's, Deal. The whole thing spans a week. Thousands of people follow them from town to town on the train like a traveling circus. Braid and Hurd win 13 in 12, as in 13 holes up with 12 to play, an absolute rout. But that match, played between the best pros on earth at the peak of their powers, does a subtle thing for the game. It makes golf watchable. It turns golf into a spectacle. Before exhibitions like this, golf is a quiet, aristocratic diversion. After, it becomes a real event. Taylor is also the one who helped found the Professional Golfers Association in 1901, the PGA, the organization that in various forms has run the business of pro golf ever since. Taylor wants pros to have a collective voice. He wants them negotiating prize money together. He wants them eventually walking through the front door of the clubhouse instead of the back. Taylor is the politician, Braid the craftsman, and Vardon's the showman, and Vardon is the one who goes to America. It's 1900. Harry Vardon gets on a steamship. He's alone. His clubs are in a canvas bag. He's 30 years old, a three-time Open champ at the time, and H.E. Spalding and brothers have paid him a small fortune to sail to the States. Spalding wants him to promote a new golf ball. They want him playing exhibitions. They want him showing Americans what the best golfer in the world actually looks like swinging a club, and they want him in the U.S. Open. Vardon sails into New York Harbor in February of 1900. The dock's crawling with reporters. The papers have been writing about him for weeks. Americans have never seen elite-level golf played. Most American golfers still grip the club like a baseball bat. Most of them still have that old St. Andrews swing. All arms and body, no spine angle. And here's this quiet, impeccably dressed Jersey man about to show them what the game is supposed to look like. He goes coast to coast, over 100 matches, 20 plus states, department stores in New York City, hitting balls into nets rigged up in the sporting goods aisles. Crowds who've never held a club in their lives. He wins most of the matches, but he does lose a handful. The specific results don't really matter. The point is Americans finally get to watch him swing. And then, in October 1900, Chicago Golf Club in Wheaton, Illinois, it's the U.S. Open. Harry Vardon wins it. J.H. Taylor, by the way, who also sailed over for the tournament, he finishes second. Two Brits, two members of the Triumvirate. 1-2 at the U.S. Open, 3,000 miles from home. Vardon's tour does something that sticks. American golf goes home and copies him. The grip changes, the swing changes, the whole way Americans understand the game changes. Again, in 1900, most Americans play with a baseball grip. 10 years later, most play with the Vardon grip. That's a single tour moving an entire country's technique. That's Harry Vardon. But Vardon would pay for it. The traveling really wore him out. And in 1903, something happens the papers don't totally want to admit. Vardon collapses, tuberculosis. TB in 1903 is for most people a death sentence. Vardon spends months in a sanatorium in Hertfordshire. He nearly dies. And when he comes back to golf, his game is not quite the same. He can still strike the ball as well as anybody alive. But his putting, the short game, the finishing touches, that's what never fully comes back. His hands shake on short putts. He twitches. He lifts out. It's one of the greatest what-ifs in sports history. If Vardon never gets sick, how many Opens would have he won? 8? 10? We'll never know. What we do know is that he still comes back and wins the Open again in 1911 and again in 1914. 6 Opens, still the record. Nobody's matched it. Not Tiger, not Jack, not anyone. Harry Vardon's 6 Opens have stood for over 100 years. Now there's one more American chapter, and it's one you've probably already heard. It's 1913, and Harry Vardon has sailed back to America. He's 43. He brings another top British pro with him, a big, gruff guy named Ted Ray. Ted Ray had just won the Open the year before. He's the reigning champion. They're in America to promote a new equipment line and to play in the U.S. Open. The U.S. Open this year is held at the Country Club in Brookline, Massachusetts. The whole thing is supposed to be a coronation. American golf has gotten better, but not that much better. But after 4 rounds, 3 guys are tied at the top. Harry Vardon, Ted Ray, and a 20-year-old amateur named Francis Ouimet, who lives in a house directly across the street from the golf course and caddied there as a kid. Nobody expected Ouimet to be anywhere close to the leaderboard. Maybe I'll do a full Ouimet episode someday, but the quick version, 18-hole playoff the next morning. Steady rain, but there's still 10,000 spectators. Ouimet beats Vardon and Ray. Vardon shoots 77. Ray shoots 78. And Ouimet, he shoots 72. That loss is the one most people remember. If you've seen the greatest game ever played, this is that tournament. Harry Vardon's the villain. Cold, precise, mechanical, old world losing to the new. But the movie doesn't really sit with this part. Harry Vardon loses that playoff with TB still in his lungs. He's been sick for a decade. The guy standing in Brookline in 1913 is just not the guy who won 3 Opens in 4 years at the turn of the century. He's a shadow of him, and the kid across the green, that Francis Ouimet, he's a healthy 20-year-old having the best day of his life. The real story is simpler. A great golfer in the back half of his career, fighting a wasting disease, lost to a kid who grew up watching him play. Next year, 1914, Vardon would win his 6th British Open, age 44, still sick. That one usually gets overlooked, and it shouldn't. World War I ends everything. No Open in 1915, no Open in 1916, no Open in 1917, no Open in 1918, no Open in 1919. 5 straight years, the golf world just stops. Taylor's 43 when the war starts. Braid, 44. Vardon is also 44. But by the time it's all over, they're pushing 50. In golf terms, especially the golf of this era, that's ancient. They all keep playing. Vardon's still competing into his 50s. He would finish second at the U.S. Open in 1920, age 50, just missing the playoff by 1 shot, which is insane. But the winning is done. None of them wins another major after the war. Taylor played his last competitive round in his late 50s. He eventually would retire back to Northam, the Devon village where he was born. Lives above the fields where he caddied as a kid, becomes honorary president of the Royal North Devon, the course where he, as an 11-year-old laborer, had been pulling stones out of the rough. Braid's eyes start to go after the war. He can't see the ball land on a flag from 200 yards. That's the end of him as a tournament player, but as one door closes, another open, because Braid can still walk a piece of land and see a golf course in it. Vardon would keep playing, keep traveling, keep teaching, until TB finally caught up with him. Harry Vardon dies March 20th, 1937, at 66. The end of the Great Triumvirate as competitive rivals. But for their legacies, for each one of them, it's just getting going. James Braid, the quiet one, points his brain at golf course design. He becomes one of the most prolific, most respected golf architects in history. Have you played Glen Eagles? You've played a Braid. The King's Course and the Queen's Course? You've played Carnoustie. That's a Braid's redesign. Brora, Narn. Add up every course he's laid out, or redesign across Scotland, England, and beyond, and the number runs well past 200. He traveled by train mostly because he never learned how to drive. He would step off a station, walk the property for a day, make his notes, and get back on the train. A course would come out of those notes. He did this for 30 years, while keeping his head pro job at Walton Heath the whole time. He would die in 1950, age 80, having played a round of golf the week before. J.H. Taylor, he becomes the political consciousness of British golf. The founding member of the PGA spends the rest of his life fighting for professionals. He captains the British Ryder Cup team, non-playing in 1933. His team wins. Taylor also champions public golf. He wants the game available to working people the way it wasn't when he was one. He chairs the National Association of Public Golf Courses. He would write books. He actually gets made an honorary member of the R&A Club, which for a Labour son is its own kind of victory. He was the pro at Royal Mid-Surrey in Richmond for 47 years. He would die in 1963, aged 91. He lives long enough to watch Arnold Palmer come to the British and win 2 of his Opens. And Harry Vardon leaves us the grip and the swing plane, and the idea that you could be a working class kid from nowhere and become the most famous athlete on planet Earth. The PGA Tour in America hands out an award every year called the Vardon Trophy. It goes to the guy with the lowest scoring average on tour. Jack has won it, Tiger has won it, Scotty's won it. Every year when the trophy gets handed over, whether the winner realizes it or not, the winner is being told, "You swing the way Harry Vardon taught people to swing." Every overlapping grip you see on a Sunday at a major, every upright swing, every pro who treats the sport like a craft, every exhibition, every paid appearance, every time a pro walks through the front door of a clubhouse instead of the back. That's Vardon, that's Braid, and that's Taylor. Together, the three of them dragged the game out of the 19th century and into the 20th. One last thing before I let you go. The Great Triumvirate were the first real pros, the first guys to prove that if you were good enough, the game could be your life. The first to tour, the first to endorse equipment, the first to land on the sports pages. The first full time, big time, internationally famous pro golfers the world had ever seen. Everything since, every Palmer, every Nicklaus, every Tiger, every Rory, every Scotty, they're all walking a road that three working class kids from three different corners of the British Isles paved with their spikes. Harry Vardon, James Braid, J.H. Taylor. Three friends, 16 opens in 21 years. One era, the Great Triumvirate. That's going to do it for this one. If this one hits you the way it hit me, send it to a golf buddy who thinks the history of the sport starts with Arnold Palmer. Subscribe, follow if you haven't. I'll see you on the next episode of Roll It Back. Thank you to our sponsor, Birdie Social Club, for making this video possible. Birdie Social Club is the ultimate free golf achievement and golf course tracking app for those of us who want to celebrate every great shot and understand their game at a deeper level. Track all of your birdies, eagles, and aces. Track every course you played. Analyze your game. Whether you just sank your first birdie or chasing your next ace, Birdie Social Club is the app for you. Download in the App Store today.